It was the kind of day you could mistake for ordinary. A Wednesday with a sky like a faded sheet hung up to dry. The city was waking up, yawning, and stretching itself into the usual gray drizzle. That was how Mike saw it from his fourth-floor apartment window. Gray, bland, and unremarkable. But the drone, a black buzzing speck against the ashen sky, was the first thing that seemed to have a pulse that morning. He spotted it hovering just beyond his window, like some inquisitive airborne insect. Mike was a man with no enemies, or at least none that he knew of. Just a guy pushing 40, divorced, with a collection of unwatered houseplants and a refrigerator full of cheap beer. He wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to draw attention. But there it was, that drone. It hung there like it had been sent specifically for him, its red eye blinking steadily. It was unsettling. At first, Mike thought it was some kid's toy, a harmless gadget buzzing by. But the way it just hovered, too still, too focused, prickled the skin on the back of his neck. He turned away, tried to ignore it, telling himself he was being paranoid. But the damn thing stayed. Every time he glanced back, there it was, just beyond the glass, like it was watching him, studying him. That's when the memories came back. Mike had worked as a systems engineer for the military once. Top secret contracts, drones that could spy on a gnat's heartbeat from a mile away. But that was 10 years ago. He had left that life behind after a contract went south, leaving him with a scar down his left leg and a permanent limp. No one knew about his past. At least, no one should have. The next day, it was there again. This time, it was closer. He could hear it buzzing faintly, that mechanical hum drilling into his eardrums like an itch he couldn't scratch. It followed him, too. He walked to the corner store to grab his usual pack of cigarettes. And there it was, a black dot against the backdrop of the grimy, overcast sky. He tried to shoo it away, waving his arms like a madman in the middle of the street, but it merely backed up, giving him just enough space to remind him it was still there. It wasn't until the third day that things got strange. It was 3 a.m. and Mike was up, drinking alone in his darkened apartment, the blue light of the TV flickering like a heartbeat. That's when he heard it. Tap, tap, tap. At first, he thought it was rain, but then it got louder, more insistent. The sound was coming from his window. He pulled the curtains aside, his breath catching in his throat. The drone was right up against the glass now, that blinking red eye staring into his soul. It was bigger than he had realized. The lens on it looked like a human eye. Round, glassy, almost sentient. For a moment he was sure it blinked. He turned away, heart pounding, the cold sweat gathering on his forehead. A soft ping echoed from his phone. He picked it up, the screen blinding him in the darkness. It was a message with no number attached. Just one sentence. "We're watching you, Michael." That was enough to break him. He yanked the curtains shut, locked every door and window, and downed the last of his whiskey. The droning sound was gone, but the silence was worse. It was as if the whole building had exhaled and was holding its breath, waiting. By the time dawn rolled around, Mike was a mess of nerves, his eyes bloodshot and hands shaking. He stumbled out of his apartment, desperate for air. But the moment he stepped onto the street, he saw it. A swarm of them. Hundreds of drones hovering just above the buildings, black and ominous like a cloud of digital locusts. He felt something cold against his temple. He reached up and his fingers came away wet. Blood? No, it was something else. Tiny metal filaments like spider webs, but sharp enough to draw blood, were sticking to his skin. He swiped at them, panicking. but more fell from the sky, wrapping around him like a cocoon. And that's when he heard it. A whisper. Not from a person, but from the swarm itself, like 100 voices murmuring in unison. You thought you could hide, Michael. You thought we forgot. The last thing Mike saw before the darkness swallowed him was that blinking red eye. And for the first time, he realized it wasn't a camera at all. It was an eye, hungry, patient, and oh so human. No one saw Mike again after that morning. His apartment was empty, save for a single drone, its red light blinking steadily in the corner, waiting for its next assignment. Some say that if you listen closely, on certain cold, foggy mornings, you can hear the hum of drones above the city. And if you're very unlucky, you might hear that whisper too.